Welcome, everybody, to a special edition of Keep the Line Moving. I am your host, Chris Gargano. This is the podcast that talks about leadership, life, and inspiration. It's a special edition for two reasons. It's our 10th episode, so I thank you very much for tuning in and watching each and every week. You don't know how much I appreciate you. But this guest this week is a special guest. He's a gentleman that I grew up with. We grew up on the same street, went to the same schools, played Little League together, played high school baseball together, American Legion baseball together. But that's our story. What we're talking about today is his story, which is incredibly inspirational. He made it to the major leagues with his hometown team, the San Francisco Giants. The story is amazing. He will tell you about all of the nuances from Little League to college to the pros. You don't want to miss this. I'm so glad you're here. Here is my friend, Jalal Leach. Jalal, as usual, it is great to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Can't complain, Chris. Another day above ground, another nice day. Get to see some ball today.
See, that's the way to look at life. Exactly what you just said. Have a sense of gratitude, putting that smile that you've had on your face for, let's say, a lot of years that I've known you. Which is, and we had that in common, my friend. Jalal, tell me, listen, you tell everybody where you are and what you're doing today, because not everybody gets a chance to be a professional baseball scout. And then we'll talk in totality of your wonderful life in the game that you love.
Well, today is my second day here in Tampa, Florida, doing my spring training coverage. So yesterday I went to the Yankees and the Cardinals spring training game and just watched the players go through their routines, and everyone's building towards getting ready for the season. So I'll be back out there, but I'll be on the minor league side, looking at some of the young prospects that the Yankees are hoping develop into something as they come along as ball players.
That's fantastic. And look at the jersey that you're wearing, or the shirt that you're wearing. Your hometown team, the San Francisco Giants. And I know they have a special place in your heart, as they do in mine. And we'll get to that in a second. Jalal, I bury the lead. We grew up together, same street, same friends, same school, same everything. When you think back to your childhood in Novato, California, what do you think of?
Well, just it was a safe place. We all played all the sports outside. We just knew we had to be in by the time the street light came on, and we just made a lot of friendships, and we just had fun. I mean, I just remember always being active, not really being in the house too often. So for me, growing up in Novato, the sports community, the school, everything was, my parents were just doing the best they could do for us, and it's where we landed from San Francisco, and it was a great place to grow up.
It really was. And you talk about like coming inside when the lights go, or the it gets dark at night. And that's so true. We were always out developing leagues, playing all three sports all the time. So when you think back to that and what you later became in life and achieved, the greatness that you have and the sustainability in your career in baseball, what are those foundational elements that you think back to that really helped and guided you through your journey?
Well, for me, baseball didn't come on until really my sophomore year in high school. I played all, pretty much all the sports, whatever was in season. So, once I got into high school, I loved basketball. So that was always my first love. That's what I paid most attention to. But I played baseball because everyone else played. And, it took me going to camp down at Cal State Fullerton, where the then, legendary coach Augie Garrido was the head coach. And I held my own at the camp. And I remember him asking me, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Novato." And he's like, "Nevada?" I was like, "No, not Nevada, Novato." He's like, "Where's that?" And I just said, "It's in Northern California, just 30 miles north of the Golden Gate Bridge." And he said, "Man, you're pretty good at baseball." And I told him, I said, "Man, I'm a basketball player. I just came because I thought the camp was cool." And he was like, "Well, you might want to reconsider baseball." And then when I came home, start getting recruiting letters, the little scout cards. And then, I told my dad, maybe this is the direction I should go. but I'm not giving up hoop. So, that's where baseball kind of took off for me, was that sophomore year.
So wait a minute, you still liked baseball. You were still very good at baseball. I remember your little league teams, and I remember, all the success that you had growing up. So baseball was a close number two, I would assume, right?
Yep, definitely.
And then, so Augie Garrido tells you, listen, you might want to invest more time in this. So what did you do, Jalal? For goodness sakes, I was with you. We used to go and practice on our own, and in addition to the high school and American Legion and all those games, we would do stuff on our own. But what other commitment did you have? Did you swing the bat in the garage? Did you go out in front of your house? Like, what other things did you do once Augie Garrido gave you that realization, hey, you might want to stick with this?
I would say, believe it or not, between my brother and the kid Steve Smith, who lived across the street, we honed our skills on the garage door playing a game called Strikeout, if you remember.
I
And
sure do.
we wore the paint down off the garage door, and that's where we got the tennis ball and those taped up wiffle ball bats. And we drew with some masking tape, we drew a batter's box, and we couldn't have been more than 30 feet away, and we just tried to blow it by each other. And that's where we learned hand-eye coordination, and the ability to throw strikes. And, to this day, I still feel like that's where I learned to hit, was hitting off my brother and hitting off Steve Smith in the garage, or off the garage door out into the street, with that tennis ball.
And you remember those big AC Transit buses would go by, and if you hit one of those, it's a home run.
It was dangerous. I don't recommend it, but I guess we just thought we were invincible and we could dodge the cars trying to get that tennis ball. But now that I look back on it, probably wasn't a smart thing to do.
Okay, so Jalal, you grow up in Novato, California. You're playing Little League. You're playing strikeout in front of your house. How instrumental were your parents in your development, and understanding, the foundation that they set for your family and for your career and your success, like, getting their advice? How did you process that every day growing up?
Well, basically, sports was an extracurricular activity, so we knew we had to take care of chores, schoolwork, whatever they wanted us to do before we got to participate in any sport. So for me, sports was always something. It was like a reward that we didn't take for granted. And I tell this story. I even told this to my son when he was younger, or both my kids actually when they were younger, about how when I think I was 10 years old, and that's the first time you could try out for majors and little league, and I was cutting up at San Ramon Elementary, um, getting in I don't want to say fights, disagreements, me using bad language and getting in trouble, and eventually got sent to the principal's office. And all I kept saying was, please don't tell my dad. I'll do anything. I'll pick up paper at lunch, trash at lunch, forever. Just don't tell him, because I was scared to death of him. And so they said they didn't tell him, but they did. And I had to pick up trash at lunch it felt like the whole school year, but it was for a while. And I was cool with it because I just didn't want my dad to know, because I knew there would have been consequences with him. And so I did that. And then eventually, after a while, my dad said, I knew about it the whole time, but they were disciplining you, so it was okay. And then a part of that was my grades had fallen. And so they didn't sign me up for Little League. And I remember some of the Little League coaches calling my mom and dad saying, Mr. and Mrs. Leach, we'll help him with his homework. And they're like, nope, he's not playing this year. So in probably a matter of, so I didn't get the opportunity to try out. So in a matter of, I don't know, a month or two, I did a full 360, got my grades up, started being a better human. And for my birthday, they put me on the waiting list to play Little League. So tryouts had come and gone, and I couldn't play in the majors. So they put me on the waiting list. And I remember an incident. We were in lunchtime. We were all sitting on a bench, and the yard duty came by, and it's probably 10 of us just sitting there from Mike Irvine on down. and they were asking everyone what team they were on. And guys were like, oh, the Mets, the Phillies, the Reds. And I was sitting at the end, what team you on? And I dropped I hate baseball. Baseball is stupid, because I was embarrassed because I
Right.
knew I didn't get to try out and I couldn't play. So that always resonated with me. I knew my parents were no joke when they did not let me play Little League as a 10-year-old, which I could never get back. Never got it back.
However, look at the lesson that it taught you, right? You just said your grades went up, you learned about confrontation and all that. So would you, and now that you look back, yes, you don't have that 10-year-old year in the majors. However, when you look back, do you see that as a valuable lesson going forward about what you can lose if, consequence wise?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, that's still a light tower moment to this day. I remember the story, and you know how much of an impact it had, because when you're with your peers, your friends, and you're on the sidelines, it makes you feel some type of way. So it just taught me, hey, you got to play by the rules, and stay in line, stay in order, or else there's a consequence. So I use that story with my kids just to let them know, I'm probably a lot easier than my parents were on me. I'm more of a pushover, but I let them know there's a consequence to everything if you don't follow suit.
That's a great story. And by the way, you're one of the nicest guys I've known my entire life. So that's still a great story, but I bet you were nice even in that confrontation. But anyway, Jalal, so you get to high school, you talked about your sophomore year with the Augie Garrido camp. And then so as you start accelerating in the sport of baseball, where did it take you? And when did you know that, listen, I could either get drafted here coming out of high school, or I can take a college scholarship offer? So how was that decision process with yourself and your parents coming out of San Marin High School in Novato, California?
Well, as I advanced, our junior year, going into senior year, we didn't know much about the draft. So I know a few of the scouts had called my dad and said, what are you guys interested in the draft? And he just outright said, and he didn't know. He just said he's not going to sign. You can take his name off the draft board. He's going to college. So we didn't know, anything about professional baseball. And let's face it, frankly, I was not ready for professional baseball as an 18-year-old coming out of high school. I mean, I made the right choice in going to college, because professional baseball, when you get drafted and you sign, you become a pro, and it's your job, and you got to go to work. So it would have been a different dynamic than you going down to where I ended up going to Pepperdine University, where you still have a chance to grow and mature and become somewhat independent and a young man. So that was the right move, I thought, was to go to college and get that seasoning before entering professional baseball, which, as much as I love it, it is a job with ups and downs.
No doubt. Did you have that realization back then? So when you were 18, did you know, like, if you had to go to Scranton, Pennsylvania, or the Cape Cod or whatever, out here on the East Coast, did you know you weren't ready for that? Or do you look back now and think, had I gone to professional baseball out of high school, that might have been quite challenging? Like you're saying now, it's a grind, and you have to have that maturity and that sensibility to deal with it.
Yeah, I'm sure I would have figured it out. But as a high schooler graduating high school, let's say if I were to sign out of high school, when I would have my off season, all my friends that I grew up with, they would be off at college. So I'd be pretty much on my own, in the off season, waiting for my friends to come home for Thanksgiving or Christmas break. And then they would head back to school. And then, during the summertime when they would be off, I would be playing, wherever minor league. Well, I was drafted by the Yankees, so I'd probably have been right here in Tampa in Yankee land, where I'm headed to today. And who knows how many years I would have spent there, or if I would have even cut it. But it would have been a lot different than, if I didn't go to Pepperdine, which was my choice.
So you just mentioned the Yankees, and you had 3 successful years at Pepperdine. You learned a lot, made a lot of friends. What was that draft process like? when because like you said, the draft is different. It's not like the NFL draft where it's highly publicized. The Major League Baseball draft is a little bit more behind the scenes per se. It's gotten obviously more visible since 1990. But tell us about the process by getting drafted by the Yankees in 1990 and what that was like for you.
Well, it was, going into my junior year, my roommate and I, we were, Baseball America, the publication, they had rankings. And so we were ranked, I believe there's like 76, 77 top prospects heading into the draft. Well, and his name, my roommate was Chris Martin, still my brother to this day. I can't speak for Chris, but for myself, I know when I saw that, I was ranked in the top 100 of all the amateur players. I know it made me feel some type of way. So yeah, I might have got a little, braggadocious or feeling myself, smelling myself, whatever you want to call it. But once the season rolled around, I knew I was pressing because our games. I mean, Chris and I, two high potential draft picks on the same team. So we had scouts at every one of our games. And I mean, they would be there from when we were in the cage, hitting off the tee, doing front toss, and it was really intense. And I, Chris remembers this story. There was one day, we're down in the cage early, and the scouts are filtering in, and we're hitting. I don't know what we're doing, soft tossing, hitting, and we hit some. And then Chris decided, and this is like my brother, decides not to pick up the balls when we're done. And I'm like, hey, bro, are you gonna help us pick up the balls? And he's like, no, I don't have to. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't have to? I'm like, you hit, you get. So long and short, he didn't pick up. So we start to fight in the cage. So then our head coach, Andy Lopez, longtime college coach, two-time national championship, still connected to him. I get a text from him every day. He comes running down and he's like, what's going on down here? Marty, Jalal, what do you guys are brothers? So he brings us in the office. He's yelling at us, about you guys are fighting. And, we were both just the intensity of the pressure from the upcoming draft. And, we end up making a joke of it. And then coach is like, and you two guys got a ride home in the car after the game today, because your roommates, best buddies. And here you are trying to kill each other in the cage. It really is just, the draft. We knew it was coming, and you got all these eyeballs on you, watching how you step, chew gum. What do you say to your teammates? So I know for me, I started out really slow with the bat. And this is, why I love playing for Andy Lopez. He's like my dad. He was like my dad. He just basically went straight at me and said, pull your head out and start playing. Quit worrying about all the exterior things that you can't control and play your game. So once it was almost like he was threatening to bench me. So once, he kind of set that law, I said, oh, he's about to take me out of the lineup. And then I started performing. And then I took off, and, the rest was history. Chris went in the second round to the Expos. And then I fell in the draft to the 7th round because I wore glasses in high school. And, this is pre-contact lens and LASIK and all the things we have today. And I was nearsighted in one eye. So the teams kind of shied away because they didn't know if I was going to be able to see at night. Because in pro baseball, you play at night. College, you mostly play during the daytime. So I fell to the Yankees, and then they came in and said, hey, we want to check your eyes, and if your vision's going to be fine, then we'll treat you like the upper round pick that we thought you were supposed to be, which it all worked out, and there's nothing like, playing for the Yankees, the history and, all the names and the pinstripes, it's real. That was all real. So that's kind of how it all unfolded, for me when I got drafted and sent into professional baseball.
See, another great story. You got the 10-year-old Jalal, getting in trouble at school, and then your dad and everybody disciplining you. You have the realization, wow, I got to adjust if I want to be on the majors. And then you sat and then everybody's talking about their teams, hey, you're on the Mets, you're on the Phillies, but Jalal says, I hate baseball. So you take a learning moment there. And then Coach Andy Lopez of Pepperdine says, you can't fight with your best friend, and you have a learning moment there. Then you start to hone in, and then you're drafted by the Yankees in the 7th round. So you have all these moments in your life where you're learning, changing behavior, excelling, learning, changing behavior, and excelling. What was it like those first few days as a New York Yankee in the summer of 1990?
Coming from Northern California, we have heat in the summer, but we don't have humidity. I came off the plane and the humidity was like being in a steam room in the middle of June. So the next day we get up and go over to the Yankee complex, and they're having us take batting practice, and we're doing in and out. And I was telling Tim Narian is the executive for the Yankees that I was telling this to last night. And I remember, I was out in center field, and it's hot, it's humid. I'm nervous. I want to impress. You have all the draft picks, the newbies, and they're hitting ground balls, and so they hit one to me in center, and I came up to field it, and I clanked it. And our then coordinator, rest in peace, Mr. Mark Newman, longtime Yankee executive, he comes out to me and he introduced himself, and he says, Jalal, welcome. He goes, Jalal, welcome to the Yankees. He goes, that button on the top of your cap? I said, yeah. He goes, well, when you're going to field a ground ball as an outfielder, I need to see that button. If I don't see that button, there's a good chance that you don't have your eye on the ball, and that's why you missed it. And I was like, okay. And he goes, and welcome to the New York Yankees. And I was like, wow, this is serious biz. And I remember going back to the hotel, calling my parents and saying, I don't know how long I'm going to last at this. All these guys are really good. And my dad being the authoritative person going, just put your head down, keep working hard, you'll be fine. And then after that, we end up breaking camp, all the draft picks, and we went to short season A-ball up in upstate New York, or Oneonta, New York, another place I had never been before. And we had a great staff. Trey Hillman, who was my longtime major league coach, executive. I just saw him a couple weeks ago in Arizona. Every time I see him, I say, this is all your fault. I'm still in this game because you broke me in, because we didn't know what we were really getting into.
So you go through the minor leagues and you're learning and you're progressing from single A to double A to triple A. How do you look back on those moments and, in your evolution as a ball player? And you're very good with teammates and very good with coaches, understanding the big picture, which is to be part of this organization. And like the gentleman said at the Yankees, I want to see the top of your cap when you're fielding. And so what was it like being in the minor leagues and learning the game at the professional level?
Most of us were coming out of college, so we still had the college mentality. Team first, pulling for each other. We didn't really understand baseball. We thought they were going to move us all up together. We were going to stay together as a unit each step of the way. And Trey let us do our thing. He disciplined us when we needed discipline, but he let us play. I mean, me being a runner, he gave me the green light, so I could steal basically anytime I wanted. So that he let us play, and he taught us about being a professional. As you climb the ladder and you start to see, guys get released, demoted, traded, you realize the business of baseball is really what you can provide to the organization individually, and not so much the team, because the end game goal is the major leagues. Everything starts and ends with the big league team. And, as players, we're trying to climb the ladder to get to the pinnacle, hopefully, which is to play in the major leagues.
So you keep progressing and understanding that, but yet you have all these wonderful relationships, which was great. You guys were pulling for each other. Every time you talk about a teammate or you talk about a coach, which is awesome. So how did you find yourself with your hometown team, the San Francisco Giants, the colors that you're wearing right now and scouting for them again? Tell us how you got to the Giants after, many years with the Yankees and other teams.
Well, after spending 5 years in the Yankee system, getting to AAA, I then went over to the Montreal Expos, who are now the Washington Nationals.
Right.
Spent 1 year there between AA and AAA. And then I became a minor league free agent, which is, after you spend a certain number of years in the minors, you can become a free agent. And I signed with the Seattle Mariners and spent 1 year in their AAA in the Pacific Coast League. Had a good year, re-signed back with them because I'm still chasing the dream of playing in the majors. So that second year, right before spring training, they traded me and a Double-A outfielder to the Giants for Dave McCarty, an outfielder. He went to Seattle, and myself and the outfielder was Scott Smith. We went to the Giants. Went over and went to camp, and some things started to shake down. And then next thing I got caught up in the numbers game, and they released me right at the end of spring training. Well, you can see how small the world of baseball is. Well, by then, the general manager of the Giants was Brian Sabian, who, when I was a Yankee, he was the scout who had seen me play a lot, worked me out as a 19-year-old at Pepperdine. So I had history with Brian all the way back to my days at Pepperdine. So when they released me, I just called him and said, I basically asked him, I said, Brian, why did you trade for me if you knew you were going to release me at the end of spring training? And I mean, Brian, he was awesome then, and he's awesome now. And he basically said, Jalal, some guys didn't make the big team, so things trickled down. We had a roster crunch. And he said, do this for me. Because, once I got released, the only teams calling me were like independent teams or to play in Mexico. And I didn't want to do that. So he said, how do you feel about being a hitting coach in A-ball in San Jose? And I was like, me? I was like, I have no coaching experience. He goes, you'll be fine. And he goes, and I want you, while you're there, to keep working out and, do your thing. And then when the team comes in, you become a coach. So I'd get to the ballpark early, do all my own personal training stuff, hoping that I get a chance to play again. And then the players would show up, and then I'd become the hitting coach. Maybe this is where I need to focus on. The playing days are over. And then the then farm director, Bobby Evans, called me and he said, do you want to play again? And I said, sure. He goes, well, we can reactivate you because we need an outfielder in Double-A. And I said, Double-A? I've already played in Double-A. I've already spent like 2 stints in Double-A. I've already mastered those levels. But I was like, hey, it is what it is. So I said, yeah, I'll do it. Well, to back up, when I was in San Jose coaching, before I started coaching, I got introduced to Bobby Bonds Sr. And he basically, I asked him, was there anything he could do to help me with my hitting? And basically, he showed me something in my grip that no one had ever mentioned to me that was, impeding me from driving the ball or backspinning the ball. And basically, it's these 2 fingers, my pointers. And so basically, he had me take those fingers off the bat. And right away, I went from top spinning balls to back spinning balls, and my power just increased. So when I went back to playing, I mean, long and short of it, in like a short season, I ended up hitting like almost 350. I had 19 homers between Double-A and Triple-A. And then all of a sudden, I went from being suspect, which is a baseball term, to prospect again at age, I believe it was 27, 28. And it was just all the adjustment that Bobby had shown me with my grip, just to get me to backspin the ball. So, then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, God, this guy's made adjustments. And I equate it now to like what Mike Yastrzemski has done with the Giants, an older prospect, got an opportunity, made some changes, and now he's been a really, really good big leaguer for the last 4 or 5 seasons.
Another great story. What I want to point out here is you called Brian Sabian, the general manager of the San Francisco Giants, and you said, hey, what's going on here? You traded for me, but then, I'm not where I want to be. And Brian, who I got to work with as well, and Bobby Evans, quality human being and professional, obviously, but he had the presence of mind of giving you that advice to be a hitting instructor and then keep your skills honed. And then it worked out, Jalal. It worked out. And then you also had the presence of mind to go to Bobby Bonds for the grip adjustment. So you look at these stories that you're sharing with us, you could see the success and why it took place. Do you look back at it that way? Obviously, you're sharing the stories with us, but there's these little moments that led you to being called up by the Giants, which we'll get to next. But you must be, and I got to say this as your friend, you got to be proud of yourself for these moments and the action that you took at certain times in your career.
I just remember my parents always saying, you know, as you go through life, try your best not to burn bridges because you never know when you're going to have to cross them again. So I guess that was always my mindset. I mean, yeah, sometimes it happens. You got to burn bridges if someone burns you, or or you burn them. But it was just, you just never know, especially in the profession that I'm in. So for me, I just try to always be accommodating, friendly to people. Because at the end of the day, for me, Chris, we're making our livings in a kid's game.
Mm-hmm.
So I still think back to playing in the field at the top of my house, where we organize ourselves, or Miwok Park. Even though it led to college, to pro ball, to the big leagues, to now scout, I still, sometimes, when I'm up there scouting, I'm still like, this is a kid's game, and these guys are just all big kids, and we're being employed, at a kid's game. So, I try not to put too much into it, because that's how we're making our living. So that's just kind of how I approach this profession. With the highs and the lows, is it's a kid's game, and it's not life or death.
And that sense of gratitude and appreciation is what's driven you, and now you give back to the kids with, how you're always on social media giving hitting advice and, always trying to make kids better, which is fantastic. But I don't want to gloss over the moment. Let's go back to 2001, the summer of 2001, and tell us what happened, Joel. I think that was maybe a big time in your life. I'd love to hear that story.
At the end of the AAA season, it's the last game there, and I was playing in Fresno. So as the game was going along, I was kind of venting, and I remember at one point sitting on the bench next to our trainer, then Rick Limbo, and kind of venting to Rick and kind of saying, I don't know what it's going to take to get to the big leagues. And the game's going along, and I like Limbo, and we got along well. And he just gets up and he walks away from me. And then I'm thinking, God, the trainer won't even listen to me vent. So I was like, all right, Rick, I see how you are. So he just walks away. We finished the game, and I think I hit a homer the last day, and I got a couple of hits, but I'm like, it's not enough. My manager comes in, Shane Turner, who I work with now in the scouting department. He comes in there and he's yelling at me, and he's like, Leachy, get in my freaking office. You missed some signs. And I'm thinking, no, I'm like, Shane, there's no way you can be fining me the last game of the season for missing signs. I'm like, come on. I got a long drive home, and he's just going off. And I'm like, well, Skip is calling me into the office. So I go in, and then some guys say, oh, you're going to big leagues. I'm like, I'm not going to big leagues. Shane's trying to get $25 out of me for whatever sign I missed today or something I did wrong during the game. So I go in his office, and he's like, close my door. And so he's yelling, and our hitting coach is in there, Mike Hart, who I had history with all the way back to not just the Giants days, but the Yankee days. And so Shane's just going off, and I'm just, when someone's yelling at you, you're listening, but you're like tuned out. So I'm like, God, come on, Shane. And he's just going on and on and on. And by the way, if you want to, the Giants want you to play for them tomorrow in San Francisco. I hear that in him while he's yelling. I was like, what? What did you say? And he yells it again. And I was like, and then Mike was sitting there, and I go, Hardy, did he say what I thought he said? And he goes, yeah, Jaybird. And I was like, what? And then Shane starts smiling. He goes, you going to the big leagues? And I was like, no way. And I start welling up. And then the team, they were listening by the door because everyone knew I had spent 12 years in the bushes, waiting for that call. And so Bobby Evans, our then farm director, he called me and gave me he confirmed the news, and everyone let out a cheer. That was really cool. Teammates hugging, high-fiving. And I mean, I played with some really good teammates that went on and had really good big league careers. So I told one of our clubhouse attendants, if he could go get my dad, who was up in the stand. So, they're like, Mr. Leach, Jalal needs to see you right away. So my dad comes running down to the locker room, and he thinks something is wrong with me physically. So he comes in, and right by our door was by the laundry room, and he goes, "What's wrong? Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." I go, "Dad, I'm going to the big leagues," and he's like, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." So we hugged and had a moment, and then quickly changed and drove back to Sac. And my dad was like, "I'm gonna drive because I know you want to call everyone and let them know, and you're probably a nervous wreck and excited." So I called my old teammate, roommate, who was in the big leagues with the Philly, Kevin Jordan. He was the first person I called after my wife and mom, and said, "KJ, man, I got the call." And so he's lecturing me, telling me, how to behave and what I need to do when I get up there. My daughter she had just turned 1, and then my son was coming right after the season. So we get up and, we leave really early. We get to the city in a breeze, and when you go to the big leagues, they put you up in a hotel for like the first week. So we go to the hotel, and we're sitting there, and my wife, then she goes, I was like so tuned out. I had no interest in my daughter or her. I'm just sitting there like saying to myself, I wish you would just let me go to the field. And she's like, "You've been waiting so long for this. Why don't you just go to the field?" And I was like, "Yes." I'm like, "It's okay." She's like, "Yeah, go, because you've been dying for this." In the big leagues, you don't carry your bags. So you go in, and the clubhouse guys meet you out in the parking lot. They take all your bags, and they put it on the cart, and they take you into the clubhouse. So it's like, I was like, this is really happening. So I'm in there really, really early. I think it's like noon. So no one's in there. So Mike Murphy, longtime clubhouse guy, I think Murph just retired recently. He comes in, and I go in his office, and he goes, "Jalal, I know you spent a long time in the minors. Typically we give rookies big numbers." He goes, "But since you spent so much time down there in the bushes," he goes, I felt you deserved a good number. So I gave you number 18. And just like a kid in Little League, first day of Little League, I put my whole uniform on. And I wish we had the iPhones and, smartphones back then, because I put my uniform on, and I went in the bathroom, and I'm in the mirror looking at my uniform like a kid getting ready for his first game in Little League. So, just giggling and going, I made it. And no one's there. There's no one in the locker room because I'm there at like noon. So I take off the jersey, and I'm just sitting there, with my practice stuff on. And the next person to come in is Dusty. And Dusty walks in the locker room. He looks left, then he looks right, and he sees me like sitting in my locker, like I got my glove on, pounding my glove. I got, my bat's right by. And he looks to the right. He just starts laughing. He goes, "Should have known. This guy would be early on his first day at the job." So he brings me into his office, congratulates me, just tells me what my role is going to be, and we were still in contention, and then from there it just went, and we were playing the Diamondbacks, and then family and friends start showing up, so I'm taking pictures and signing autographs, and my family, my grandfather, who was alive then, who played in the Negro Leagues, he was like the most excited person because he got to see his grandson play. We are from San Francisco, play for the hometown team, and that made it awesome to, for him to see that. And like I said, my family, and from being from Novato, it was an awesome experience. And then I'll leave you with this quick story, because we both know him. And one of the games, I don't know if it was the game I started versus the Dodgers, or if it was a game I went up in to left field in mop-up time. It might have been my start. And so I'm playing left field, and I'm, of course I'm nervous, and it's 40-something thousand people there in San Francisco, and I hear this voice from the bleachers, and I hear a guy saying, "You grew up on San Marin Drive, you went to San Ramon, you went to Sinaloa, you played for the Cardinals," and I knew who it was. And so I turn around, and I look, and I go, Henry, I can hear you. And it was Henry Hata, who we
Oh,
grew up with, now
yes.
the owner of Finnegan's. And he was there with some buddies, and they didn't believe him that he knew me. And like in between innings, I had to turn and just tell him, Henry, I can hear everything you're saying. So we laugh, we still laugh about it to this day. And it was, it was awesome seeing a lot of people that I grew up with that came out and supported and watched. And wish my time would have been longer, but it is what it is. But those are the best 31. All those days I spent in the bushes were worth those 31 days in the major leagues. And I could say I made it to the big leagues, and I got my one hit off of Octavio Dotel, who I will always be connected to. And my first at bat was Kurt Schilling, so I'm real grateful for that. And now I'm just a scout and helping my kids out. And my daughter's in Orlando, which isn't too far from me here, work for Disney, going to Central Florida. And my son's playing college baseball, and he wants to hopefully get a chance to play pro ball one day. So, and I'm just day to day. And I got a Zoom call here in about a half an hour with my bosses from the Giants, and then it'll be out to the backfields to watch the Yankees minor leaguers.
You know what? I just love that story. I love the whole story. It's, do you feel like, and I got to let you go because you got to get to the ballpark, but the whole town of Novato and all of your family and friends were with you when you got called up. And I bet it's just a culmination of hard work and support. It's such a great story. And, we were all so proud of you. You don't need me telling you that, but my goodness, it was, what a great story. I love it.
Yeah,
And you're
no,
still living the dream today.
yeah, and it takes a village. I always give props to Bob Selna, my little league coach. He was hard on me. He knew I had talent. I didn't understand it at age 11 and 12, but he knew I had talent. And moving up into high school, my basketball coach, Paul Fairbuff, who was extremely hard on me. Coach Lopez was like my dad. So we connected, and we're still connected to this day. And like I said, he sends me a text every morning, and I give him the thumbs up after I read it. And just moving forward into my professional career, having, like I said, Trey Hillman. There's a laundry list of coaches, even guys that maybe I didn't get along with or I butted heads with. I still learn from those experiences. Up to playing for Dusty and still having a relationship with Dusty. And like I said, Sabian and Bobby Evans, it goes on. It's relationships. And now I'm a little older, even though I don't think I am. I've helped coach and mentor in scout school. So I've, had my trainees the last 2 years. We stay connected, and they're getting in pro ball, whether it's coaching or scouting. So to me, it's just paying it forward. But a lot of it, this all culminates because of my parents. This is the household I grew up in. Is they were always taking care of people, helping up, putting others before self, and that was family, friends, even strangers. So everything that I've learned really comes from my mom and dad, who are my idols. So, my dad's no longer with us, and we miss him, and I know I miss him every day. Still, thank God, have my mom here, but I can't thank them enough because they provided so much for us along the way. And all I can do is, continue that on with my kids. And if they decide to have kids one day and I become a grandpa, geez, um, just keep it going. And it's just one day at a time. So I appreciate you for having me on this, and it's been a blast. And I do it anytime, bro. I got a million stories. So I know we've been on for a while, but so I've the world, as Sammy Sosa would say, baseball been very, very good to me, which he is not lying, because I've been all over the United States, Latin America, Asia, even Australia, because of baseball.
And you're great point and a wonderful way to end it. Your family is fantastic. And I could see why you had all this success and perseverance to do great things and inspire a lot of people. I'll tell you that. And we thank Jalal very much for being on the show. Let's be honest. I have more than one takeaway from this conversation, but I'll limit it to two. Okay. Number one, relationships. Jalal valued all the people in his life that helped him with his journey, from family members to friends to teammates to coaches. You heard him. Every story he told, he gave credit to somebody else and the impact that they had, whether he was learning or developing as a baseball player or as a human being. Number two, perseverance. Jalal never gave up. All those years in the minor leagues to eventually get called up in 2001 to his hometown team, the San Francisco Giants. He never gave up, whether it was learning a lesson in grammar school or learning a lesson in college about when he fought with his best friend in the batting cage. He never gave up. He always turned everything into a learning moment and got better from it. What a guest. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Jalal Leach, everybody. We thank him very much. And I thank you each and every week for tuning in or listening. I'm very appreciative. For our podcast producer, Paul Salazar, I am Chris Gargano. We can't wait to see you next week. If you give us a like, a comment, or anything, subscribe. You know we appreciate it. Take care, everybody. We will see you next time.
We thank you for listening to Keep the Line Moving. We would love it if you subscribed or left a review. For more podcast episodes, check out our YouTube page. If you'd like to work with the Gargano Leadership Group, check out our website. This has been a GLG production, copyright 2023. For our podcast producer, Paul Salazar, and our marketing coordinator, Savin Narwal. Have a great week, everyone.